The White House was rocked by a development that few in Washington had seen coming. The air was thick with tension, as if the stormy sky above the White House mirrored the brewing conflict within its walls. Ontario, Canada's most populous province and a major supplier of electricity to the United States, suddenly slapped a 25% tariff on all electricity exports heading south of the border. This wasn't just a minor policy tweak. It was a bold, calculated move that sent shockwaves through both governments and energy markets. President Trump, who had already made tariffs his signature tool in trade negotiations, saw Ontario's action as a direct and personal challenge. For months, he had wielded tariffs like a hammer, reshaping America's trade relationships, but this time, the blow came from a close ally, one that shared not just a border, but deep economic and cultural ties. The administration's response was immediate and fierce. Top officials scrambled to frame Ontario's move as nothing less than economic aggression, warning that such actions could not go unanswered. The press room buzzed with speculation, and headlines blared about a looming trade war between neighbors. This wasn't just a routine trade spat, it was a high-stakes escalation between two of the world's most deeply connected economies. Every day, billions of dollars in goods, services, and energy flow across the US-Canada border, supporting millions of jobs on both sides. Now, that flow was under threat. For months, the US had targeted Canadian industries with tariffs, especially steel, aluminum, and autos, arguing that these measures were necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair competition. Factories in the Midwest and Rust Belt watched anxiously, hoping for relief. Ontario's retaliation sent a clear message. Canada would not simply absorb the blows. Canadian officials stood before the cameras resolute, insisting that they had no choice but to defend their own workers and industries. The mood in Ottawa was one of defiance, not submission. In response, President Trump declared a national emergency on electricity, calling Canada's tariff a direct threat to US energy security. This dramatic legal maneuver was designed to unlock sweeping federal powers, allowing the administration to take aggressive countermeasures. Behind closed doors, government officials pored over legal documents and strategy memos, searching for ways to hit back. The stakes were high, and the pressure to act decisively was immense. Around the world, markets trembled as the conflict threatened to spiral out of control. Business owners, factory workers, and families on both sides of the border watched the news with growing anxiety, fearing for their livelihoods as plants idled and orders dried up. What began as targeted tariffs had now become a tit-for-tat battle with a critical trading partner. Each new measure was met with a countermeasure, and the cycle of escalation seemed endless. The principle at stake was clear. The US expected to set the terms of trade, and any pushback, even from a friend, was seen as an affront to American authority. Negotiations grew tense, and trust between the two nations began to erode. The unfolding drama underscored just how quickly economic relationships can sour. Once stable industries now faced layoffs and closures, and financial markets reacted with volatility and fear. Both economies now faced deep uncertainty, caught in the crossfire of a rapidly escalating conflict. The future of North American trade and the livelihoods of millions hung in the balance, as leaders on both sides searched for a way out of the crisis. Inside Toyota's Ontario plants, anxiety was mounting. The Trump tariffs threatened the core of their business. Over 80% of their 500,000 vehicles were bound for the US. Toyota chose to absorb the tariff costs, shielding American consumers from price hikes, but this was unsustainable. Profits shrank, jeopardizing future investments and jobs. Despite being among the world's most efficient factories, Toyota's Canadian operations were now at risk, not from poor performance but from political crossfire. The uncertainty loomed over thousands of workers. If tariffs persisted, tough choices like raising prices or cutting production would be inevitable. The fate of Ontario's auto industry now hinged on high-stakes negotiations far beyond the factory floor. In a move that stunned both sides of the border, Ontario struck back with a dramatic policy shift. The province imposed a hefty 25% tariff on all electricity exports to the United States, a bold, retaliatory move that sent shockwaves through the energy sector and beyond. The impact was immediate and severe. American states that had long depended on Ontario's reliable and affordable power supply suddenly faced soaring costs overnight. Factories, businesses, and even households in border states braced for higher electricity bills, and energy managers scrambled to find alternatives. Yet, in a surprising twist, the tariff lasted just one day. The clock was ticking, and the pressure mounted on both sides to find a solution before the situation spiraled further. After a high-stakes, high-level call between Ontario's Premier Doug Ford and the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the charge was abruptly set to zero. The tariff was suspended as quickly as it had appeared. This rapid reversal revealed the frantic behind-the-scenes diplomacy that had been unfolding. Officials on both sides worked around the clock, making urgent phone calls and holding emergency meetings to prevent a full-blown trade crisis. However, the legal mechanism to reinstate the tariff remained firmly in place, leaving it as a powerful bargaining chip for future negotiations. The threat was not gone, it was simply put on hold. This fragile truce underscored just how deeply intertwined the Canadian and American economies truly are. The flow of electricity across the border is not just about power, it's about jobs, industry, and the daily lives of millions. A single political decision made in Toronto could instantly ripple across the border, impacting American homes, businesses, and entire communities in real time. The one-day tariff became a powerful symbol of how quickly trade disputes can escalate, and just as quickly de-escalate when the stakes are high and the connections are deep. The threat of renewed tariffs lingered in the air, keeping both governments, business leaders, and energy consumers on edge, uncertain about what might come next. In this new era of global uncertainty, even sectors once considered stable, like energy, can quickly become battlegrounds in the larger struggle over trade, power, and national interests. President Trump's response to Ontario's tariff was swift, more tariffs, this time targeting Canadian aluminum and steel. He declared a national emergency on electricity, framing Canada's move as a threat to U.S. energy security. This legal step allowed unprecedented federal intervention in the energy market. The declaration also served a domestic agenda, justifying support for struggling U.S. coal plants under the guise of national security. The trade dispute became entangled with U.S. energy policy. For Ontario, it was a warning future retaliation would be met with overwhelming force. The aggressive posture left little room for compromise. Economic disagreements were now national security crises, raising the stakes for both countries. The rift between allies deepened, with every move escalating the conflict. As the US and Canada clashed over trade policies and tariffs, Europe quietly seized the moment, watching from across the Atlantic as tensions escalated. The North American trade war sent shockwaves through global markets, making investors increasingly wary of putting their money into an unpredictable environment. As uncertainty grew, investors began searching for safer, more stable opportunities, eager to avoid the volatility that now defined North America's business climate. European nations saw their chance. They rolled out clear, forward-thinking regulations and offered massive incentives, making it easy for battery manufacturers to set up shop and thrive. Billions of dollars in investment, which might have fueled North American innovation, instead flowed rapidly into Europe, transforming its industrial landscape almost overnight. Gigafactories, huge battery production plants, began springing up across Germany, turning the country into a powerhouse of green technology. Poland and Sweden quickly followed, building their own state-of-the-art facilities and attracting thousands of new jobs and skilled workers. For every new job created in Europe, North America lost out. Factories closed, innovation stalled, and the future of the industry slipped away, leaving communities behind. The lesson was unmistakable. Global capital always chases stability and clear opportunity, not chaos and uncertainty. Investors want to know their money is safe and will grow. The chaos of the trade war cost North America its leadership in a technology that will define the next century: electric vehicle batteries. While the US and Canada argued, Europe built a dominant position in electric vehicle batteries, powering its own car industry and exporting to the world. The price of discord was steep, a lost opportunity that may take decades or even generations for North America to recover. Europe, meanwhile, is charging ahead into the future. Facing US tariffs, Ontario turned to its budget as a shield. The government prioritized support for its auto and battery sectors, running a larger deficit to protect jobs and investments. This wasn't reckless spending, it was a calculated move to buffer industries from trade war fallout. The message: Ontario would stand behind its core industries, providing stability in uncertain times. For companies like Toyota, this support was a lifeline, encouraging continued investment. The budget was economic self-preservation, ensuring Ontario's manufacturing heartland could weather the storm. The focus on auto and battery sectors was a bet on the province's future prosperity. Trade tensions revealed a dramatic shift in Canada's auto industry. As Detroit's Big Three scaled back, Toyota and Honda held steady, keeping production and jobs in Ontario. Their share of Canadian vehicle output soared to 70%, making them the new industry leaders. But dominance brought vulnerability. These companies were now most exposed to US tariffs. Their success depended on open access to the American market. The paradox: the strongest players had the most to lose. The fate of Canada's auto sector now rested on political decisions, not just manufacturing excellence. The tariff battle exposed a core truth: the US and Canadian economies are deeply intertwined. A dispute in one sector instantly rippled across others, disrupting supply chains and energy flows. Tariffs became roadblocks, hurting both sides. The chaos proved that stability isn't a luxury, it's essential for prosperity. Businesses and workers on both sides suffered from the uncertainty. The crisis forced both nations to recognize their mutual reliance. Only clear, predictable trade rules can sustain this vital economic partnership. As the dust settled, the lessons were clear. For Canada, the crisis exposed the risks of relying on a single trading partner and the need to diversify. For the US, protectionist tariffs backfired, costing jobs and ceding future industries to Europe. The episode showed that cooperation, not conflict, is key to North America's competitiveness. Integrated supply chains and fair, stable trade rules are essential. The trade war was a wake-up call. The US-Canada partnership can't be taken for granted. Rebuilding trust and reinforcing this alliance must be a top priority. The future depends on dialogue, respect, and a shared commitment to prosperity.